The mist rolled off the water before dawn, on the northern shore of Lake Trasimene, thick enough to swallow torchlight whole. Somewhere inside that white wall, 40,000 men waited in silence. Roman scouts had ridden past them the night before and seen nothing. Not a fire, not a spear tip, not a sound. In a matter of hours, one of Rome's consular armies would march directly into that fog, fully confident, fully armed, and utterly unaware that the ground beneath their boots had already decided their fate. Their commander believed he was hunting Hannibal. He had no idea he had already been caught. This ambush would become one of the most devastating single-day defeats in Roman military history, and it would reshape how the ancient world understood warfare itself. Historians still study it as a masterclass in psychological manipulation, terrain control, and the exploitation of an enemy's own pride. But the real question isn't just what happened at Trasimene. It's how did a foreign general, deep in hostile Italian territory, with no reinforcements and no safety net, manage to make an entire Roman army walk willingly into a trap that should have been obvious?
In your training and trust
to
in each other.
Understand that,
We
you
fight
have
not
to
but for our
understand
lives.
the man
Let no
Rome
man
sent
flinch when the
to
line
stop
meets.
him.
Follow me,
Gaius
and glory will be
Flaminius
ours.
was not a fool. He was ambitious, popular with the common soldiers, and desperate to prove himself against the aristocratic Senate that distrusted him. Hannibal had spent weeks marching through Etruria, burning farms and villages in plain view of Flaminius's camp, almost daring him to respond. It worked. Flaminius broke camp without waiting for the second consular army to join him, chasing Hannibal's forces along the shoreline road, with his men still hungry, still tired, still unprepared for what waited ahead. Here is the insight that explains everything that follows. Hannibal did not need to defeat Rome's army through superior strength. He needed to defeat Flaminius's judgment, and he understood with unsettling clarity exactly how to do it. The road along Lake Trasimene ran through a narrow strip of land, hemmed in by steep hills on one side and open water on the other. It was the kind of terrain any competent officer would have scouted with caution. But Hannibal had spent the previous night positioning his infantry, cavalry, and Gallic allies along the ridgelines above that very road, concealed by darkness and the low fog that gathered naturally off the lake each morning. He had studied this ground. He knew the weather patterns. He knew exactly when visibility would collapse. When Flaminius's column entered the defile the next morning, they could see almost nothing beyond a few dozen paces. The silence must have felt reassuring. It was the opposite. At Hannibal's signal, his forces descended from the high ground, simultaneously striking the Roman column along its entire exposed length, rather than at a single point. There was no time to form proper battle lines. No space to maneuver. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives for open field combat found themselves fighting blind, packed shoulder to shoulder,
They're breaking
unable
through!
to tell which direction the attack was even coming from. Some units tried to fight their way toward the hills. Others were pushed toward the water, wading in under the weight of their own armor, as Numidian cavalry closed in behind them. Ancient sources describe the fighting as chaotic and fast over in roughly 3 hours, rather than the extended pitched battles Romans were accustomed to.
Push them back!
Flaminius himself was killed in the melee, cut down while trying to rally his center. By the time the fog finally lifted, the scale of the disaster was unmistakable. Roughly 15,000 Roman soldiers were dead, and thousands more were captured in the following days as they tried to escape through unfamiliar countryside. A separate Roman cavalry detachment, sent to reinforce Flaminius, was intercepted and destroyed almost as thoroughly. Carthaginian losses, by contrast, were comparatively light, though exact figures vary between ancient historians and should be treated with appropriate caution. What looked, in the days before the battle, like reckless overconfidence on Hannibal's part, marching deep into Italy without securing his supply lines or waiting for reinforcements, was, in fact, the entire point. He had gambled that Rome's political pressure would force an aggressive, impatient commander into the field before he was ready. He had read Flaminius's psychology as precisely as he had read the terrain. News of the defeat triggered panic in Rome itself.
Our lines
the Senate
are broken.
appointed a dictator,
The entire
Quintus
army is
Fabius
lost.
Maximus,
This cannot
who
be.
adopted a deliberately
All is
cautious
lost.
strategy
What shall
of
we do?
avoiding direct
What shall we do?
confrontation. A decision
not
that would
rush into
define
battle.
Roman tactics against
Hannibal
Hannibal
expects us to
for
be
years
impatient.
afterward. The battle
strength lies
exposed
in
just
waiting
how
for our
vulnerable
time.
Rome's
Patience
political
will win
system
this
was
war,
to
not
a commander
rashness.
who understood not just armies, but the men who led them. Today, the shoreline of Lake Trasimene looks nothing like it did that morning. Fields and quiet towns now sit where thousands once fought for their lives in the mist, and a small stream near the site is still known locally by a name tied to the bloodshed that once colored its waters. The lake itself remains calm, almost indifferent to what it witnessed. Hannibal never defeated Rome outright, but at Trasimene, he proved something terrifying. Even the mightiest army in the ancient world could be undone not by greater numbers, but by a single mind that understood ground, weather, and human nature better than its enemy ever did. And if you're drawn to stories where strategy quietly decided the outcome before the first blow was struck, this is far from the only